Maya Henderson pushed open the glass door of Luna's Corner Café, the familiar smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries greeting her like an old friend. She counted her steps carefully, 12 from the door to her usual table by the window. But when she reached out to pull back the chair, her fingers touched someone's shoulder instead. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, stepping back. "I didn't realize someone was sitting here." "No need to apologize," came a deep voice with an accent she couldn't quite place. "I believe I may be in your regular spot. The waitress mentioned you always sit here on Tuesday and Thursday mornings." Maya tilted her head, surprised by his formal way of speaking. "You don't have to move. I can sit somewhere else." "Nonsense. Please. Allow me to share the table with you, if that would be acceptable." There was something in his voice that made her pause. It wasn't just polite, it was genuinely kind. Most people either talked to her like she was made of glass or avoided her completely when they noticed her white cane. This stranger did neither. "I'd like that," she said, settling into the chair across from him. "I'm Maya." "Kane Morrison," he replied. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Maya." The waitress, Betty, came over with Maya's usual order already prepared. "1 vanilla latte for Maya, extra hot," she said cheerfully. "And what can I get for your friend?" "Just black coffee, please," Kane said. Maya pulled out her philosophy textbook, running her fingers over the raised dots of Braille. She could feel Kane watching her, but not in the uncomfortable way most people did. His attention felt respectful. "What are you studying?" he asked. "Philosophy. Right now I'm reading about different theories of consciousness." She traced a line with her finger. "What about you? Do you work around here?" There was a small pause. "I'm between jobs at the moment, taking time to observe and learn about this area." Something about his answer seemed careful, but Maya didn't push. Everyone had their secrets. "Philosophy is fascinating," Kane continued. "What draws you to questions of consciousness?" Maya smiled. "I think when you can't see the world the way most people do, you start wondering about different ways of experiencing reality. Like, how do we know what we think we know? How much of what we call real is just our brains making sense of signals?" Kane leaned forward, genuinely interested. "And what conclusions have you reached?" "That maybe there are as many realities as there are minds to perceive them. What seems impossible to one person might be perfectly normal to another." Kane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "That's a remarkably open way of thinking. My mom always said losing my sight taught me to see things differently," Maya said with a small laugh. "I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. When you can't judge people by how they look, you learn to pay attention to other things, like how they treat the waitress, or whether they hold doors for people behind them, or if they speak differently when they think no one important is listening. And what do those things tell you?" "Everything. Character isn't about what someone looks like or where they come from. It's about the choices they make when they think it doesn't matter." Kane's coffee cup rattled slightly as he set it down. "You believe people can change? That someone who has made poor choices can become better?" Maya heard something in his voice. Not quite sadness, but something deeper. Pain, maybe. "I have to believe that. Otherwise, what's the point of trying to be good? If we're all stuck being whoever we were yesterday, then growth is impossible. And I've seen too much growth in people to believe that. Even someone who has hurt others, caused great harm, especially them." The people who need to change the most are often the ones who've traveled the farthest from who they could be. That means they have the most room to grow. Maya reached for her coffee, misjudging slightly. Kane's hand moved to steady the cup before she knocked it over. His skin was surprisingly warm, almost hot. "Thank you," she said. "You run warm." "Fast metabolism," Kane said quickly. "You were saying about people changing?" "I think everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment. The question is whether they're brave enough to take it." Kane was silent for so long that Maya wondered if she'd said something wrong. Finally, he spoke. "You have great faith in humanity." "Not blind faith," Maya said with a grin. "Sorry, couldn't resist the pun. But seriously, I think humans are capable of incredible things when they choose to be. We just have to remember that we always have a choice. Always, always. Even when all our options seem terrible, we can still choose how we respond. We can choose to be kind when the world is cruel. We can choose to help when it would be easier to walk away. We can choose to forgive when holding on to anger would feel so much better." Kane's chair creaked as he shifted. "And if someone has done things that seem unforgivable?" Maya set down her cup carefully. "Then they have to live with that. But living with it doesn't mean wallowing in it. It means using that pain to become someone who would never make those choices again." "You speak as if you know something about forgiveness." "I do. I had to forgive the drunk driver who hit our car and took my sight. I had to forgive myself for being angry about it for so long. And I had to forgive the world for not being fair." Maya shrugged. It took time. But holding on to that anger was like carrying poison around, hoping it would hurt someone else. Kane's breathing had changed. Deeper. More controlled. "That requires tremendous strength." "No, it requires tremendous stubbornness. I'm too stubborn to let the worst thing that happened to me define the rest of my life." The cafe had grown busier around them, but Maya barely noticed. There was something about talking to Kane that felt different from conversations with other people. He listened like her words actually mattered. Like he was really thinking about what she said instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. "Should let you get back to your studying," Kane said finally. "Will you be here Thursday?" The question slipped out before Maya could stop it. "Would you like me to be?" "Yes," she said simply. "I would." "Then I'll be here." Maya heard him stand, heard the soft sound of bills being placed on the table, enough to cover both their drinks, she realized. Until Thursday, Maya Henderson. She listened to his footsteps as he walked away, noting how quietly he moved for someone who seemed so large. Only after the door closed behind him did she realize he'd never told her his last name, but somehow he'd known hers. Outside the cafe, Kane Morrison stood in the alley behind the building and let his human disguise drop for just a moment. Silver. Scales caught the morning light as massive wings stretched wide before folding against his back. Kethvar the Destroyer, supreme commander of the Draconian fleet, closed his ancient eyes and tried to understand what had just happened to him. 4. The first time in 3 centuries of conquest, he found himself hoping he wouldn't have to destroy a world. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Maya grateful for her warm coffee. She settled into her usual spot at Luna's Corner Café, but this time she wasn't alone. Kane was already waiting, and somehow she could tell he was smiling even before he spoke. "Good morning, Maya. I took the liberty of ordering your vanilla latte." "Thank you." She sat down, feeling oddly pleased that he'd remembered exactly how she liked it. "So, what have you been doing since Tuesday?" "Exploring the city. Learning about how people live here." Kane's voice carried that same careful tone she'd noticed before. "Tell me about your studies. What do you want to do when you graduate?" Maya wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I want to be a counselor. Help people work through difficult times in their lives." "What about you? What kind of work did you do before you came here?" Kane was quiet for a moment. "I was in military, leadership, command positions, but I'm reconsidering that path." "What's making you reconsider?" "Meeting people like you. Realizing there might be better ways to solve problems than the methods I was taught." Maya tilted her head. "What methods were you taught?" "Force. Intimidation. Taking what you want instead of asking for it." Kane's voice grew darker. "I was very good at it." "But you don't want to be good at it anymore?" "I'm beginning to think that being good at destruction isn't really being good at anything worthwhile." Maya leaned forward. "That's a huge realization. What changed your mind?" Kane was silent for so long that Maya wondered if he'd heard her. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Someone showed me a different way of thinking about strength." "Oh? What did they say?" "That true strength comes from building things up, not tearing them down. From protecting people instead of conquering them." Maya smiled. "Sounds like a smart person. Wiser than they know." Over the following weeks, their Tuesday and Thursday meetings became the highlight of Maya's week. Kane was unlike anyone she'd ever met. He asked questions that made her think, really think, about things she'd always taken for granted. "Why do humans help strangers?" he asked one Thursday. "What do you gain from it?" Maya had been telling him about volunteering at a local shelter. "What do you mean, what do we gain?" "In my previous work, every action had a purpose, a benefit. But humans often help people they'll never see again, who can never repay them. It seems inefficient." Maya laughed. "Inefficient? Maybe. But that's not the point. We help because someone needs help, because we'd want someone to help us if we were in trouble, because it feels good to make someone's day a little better." "It feels good? You've never helped someone just because you could?" Kane considered this. "No, I don't think I have." "Want to try?" That's how Maya found herself leading Kane to the community center, where she ran a discussion group for other visually impaired students. She'd been nervous about bringing him, worried that her friends might not understand why she'd befriended this mysterious man who spoke like he was from another time. But Kane surprised her. When Amy Chen mentioned struggling with her computer, science classes, Kane somehow knew exactly how to explain programming concepts in ways that made sense. When Marcus Rivera talked about feeling isolated, Kane listened with complete attention and asked thoughtful questions. "You're good at this," Maya told him afterward as they walked back to the cafe. "At what?" "Caring about people. Being patient with them. You act like you've never done it before, but you're natural at it." Kane stopped walking. "Maya, what if I told you that I had done terrible things in the past? Things that hurt people?" Maya turned toward his voice. "Are you planning to do more terrible things?" "No. I don't think I could anymore." "Then the us past is the past. What matters is who you choose to be now. Even if the terrible things were really terrible, if people died because of choices I made." Maya felt the weight of his question, the pain behind it. Kane, are you in some kind of trouble? Do you need help? More help than you could possibly give, he said quietly. But somehow, just knowing you think people can change, it helps. That night, Kane stood on the roof of Maya's apartment building, invisible in his true form, watching her window. She was reading, her fingers moving across braille pages, her face peaceful in the lamplight. His communication device buzzed insistently, the fifth message from General Rickstar demanding updates on the invasion timeline. Kane ignored it. Instead, he thought about Maya's discussion group, about Amy's gratitude when she finally understood, her programming assignment, about Marcus's smile when Kane suggested ways to connect with other students. He thought about the way Maya's face lit up when she talked about helping people, about her absolute faith that everyone could be better than their worst moments. His people, the Draconians, didn't understand concepts like mercy or second chances. They conquered worlds because they were strong enough to do it. They destroyed civilizations because resistance was inconvenient. They enslaved populations because labor was useful. But Maya had shown him something else. She'd shown him that humans chose to be kind even when it cost them something. They helped each other not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They forgave not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to let go of anger. Kane's talons gripped the roof edge as he struggled with emotions he'd never experienced. For 3 centuries, he'd been the most feared commander in the Draconian fleet. Entire star systems surrendered at the mention of his name. He was Kethvar the Destroyer, and he had earned that title through blood and fire. But now, sitting in a cafe twice a week with a human girl who couldn't see his true form, he'd learned something that all his military training had never taught him, what it felt like to want to protect instead of destroy. The communication device buzzed again. This time it was a direct order from the Draconian High Command. The fleet was moving into Earth's outer system. Kane had 1 week to complete his reconnaissance and provide invasion coordinates. Kane looked down at Maya's window again. She was laughing at something in her book, her hand over her mouth to muffle the sound so she wouldn't disturb her neighbors. Such a small gesture, but it spoke of her constant consideration for others. How could he order the destruction of a world that had produced someone like her? His device buzzed a 3rd time. General Rickstar's message was brief and threatening. Commander, your extended reconnaissance raises questions about your loyalty. The Fleet Admiral expects your report within 7 days. Do not disappoint us. Kane crushed the device in his massive claws, then immediately regretted it. Now he had no way to contact his fleet, no way to warn them off or buy more time. He was running out of options, and he still didn't know how to choose between the only family he'd ever known and the human who'd shown him what family could really mean. In her apartment below, Maya closed her book and moved to the window, breathing in the cool night air. She couldn't see the dragon crouched on her roof, wrestling with a decision that would determine the fate of 2 worlds. She couldn't see his ancient eyes watching her with something that might have been love. But somehow she smiled up at the stars as if she knew someone was out there thinking of her. "Good night, Kane," she whispered to the darkness. Above her, Kethvar the Destroyer closed his eyes and whispered back, "Good night, Maya Henderson." For the first time in his long life, he understood what humans meant when they talked about home. The community center buzzed with quiet conversation as Maya's philosophy discussion group settled into their usual circle. Kane sat beside her, still amazed that she'd invited him to something so personal. 8 other students with various degrees of visual impairment had welcomed him warmly. accepting Maya's simple introduction of my friend Kane. Tonight I want to talk about moral transformation, Maya said, opening her braille notes. Can someone who has done terrible things truly become good? Or are we all prisoners of our past actions? Jake Martinez, a veteran who'd lost his sight in Afghanistan, spoke first. I used to think people were basically good or bad, but after what I saw in the war, good people can do evil things when they're scared or angry or following orders. So, you think good and evil are just circumstances? Asked Lisa Parks, Maya's closest friend in the group. Not circumstances, Jake replied. Choices. But I think people can choose differently if they really want to change. Kane listened as the group debated whether change was possible, whether forgiveness could be earned, whether redemption was real or just a comforting story people told themselves. He found himself studying each face, noting the kindness in their voices, the way they challenged each other's ideas without attacking each other personally. What do you think, Kane? Maya asked suddenly. You've been quiet tonight. Kane felt every eye in the room turn toward him. I think, he said slowly, that some people do things so terrible that they don't deserve forgiveness. The room grew still. Maya turned toward him, her expression concerned. But, Kane continued, maybe forgiveness isn't about what they deserve. Maybe it's about who the forgiver chooses to be. Amy Chen nodded thoughtfully. Like, forgiving someone doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you're not going to let what they did poison your life forever. Exactly, said Marcus Rivera. My brother used to beat me up when we were kids. Really hurt me. But I forgave him because carrying that anger was hurting me more than it was hurting him. Did he change? Maya asked gently. Actually, yeah, he did. Once he realized I wasn't going to keep fighting with him, he had to look at why he was so angry all the time. Turns out he was being bullied at school and taking it out on me. Kane felt something twist in his chest. But what if someone has hurt not just one person, but thousands, millions? What if they've destroyed entire... He caught himself before saying worlds. Entire communities? The group was quiet. Finally, Maya spoke. Then they have a lot of work to do to become worthy of the life they're still living. But I still think it's possible. How can you be sure? Kane asked. Maya was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on her jeans. When I was 16, I was in a car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light and hit us. My mom died instantly. I lost my sight. The driver? He was 22, had 3 kids, was driving home from his second job to pay for his daughter's medicine. Kane felt the breath leave his lungs. I hated him for years, Maya continued. Dreamed about all the ways I wanted him to suffer. But then I met his wife at the trial. She was crying, holding their baby, and I realized that destroying him wouldn't bring my mom back. It would just create more pain in the world. What happened to him? Lisa asked softly. Prison for 3 years, but he also started speaking at schools about drunk driving. Last I heard, he'd convinced hundreds of kids not to get behind the wheel when they'd been drinking. My mom's death still mattered, but now it was saving other lives, too. Kane stared at her, this remarkable human who had turned her greatest tragedy into purpose. And you forgave him? Eventually. Not because he earned it, but because I needed to forgive him to move forward with my life. Forgiveness isn't about the other person, Kane. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of your own anger. After the group ended, Kane walked Maya home through the quiet streets. Neither spoke for several blocks. You okay? Maya asked finally. You seemed upset during the discussion. I was thinking about choices, Kane said, about whether someone who has made truly terrible choices can ever balance the scales. You keep asking questions like you're talking about yourself. Kane stopped walking. What if I am? Maya turned toward him. Then I'd say the same thing I said in there. Your past doesn't have to define your future, but you have to choose to be different. And if the terrible things I did affected millions of people, then you have millions of reasons to spend the rest of your life making better choices. Kane looked up at the stars, knowing his fleet was hidden somewhere among them. Maya, what would you do if you found out someone you cared about had lied to you about something important? Depends on why they lied. To protect you. From what? From the truth about who they really are. Maya considered this. I guess I'd want to know if they were planning to keep lying or if they were ready to trust me with the truth. Kane felt something break inside his chest. He wanted to tell her everything, who he was, why he was here, what was coming. But how could he explain that he was the monster in every human nightmare about alien invasion? How could he tell her that he'd come to destroy her world and was now desperately trying to figure out how to save it? Kane, Maya said gently, whatever you're running from, whatever you've done, it doesn't change who you are now. The man who sits with me in the cafe, who listens to my friends' problems, who asks questions because he genuinely wants to understand, that's who you are. What if that man is just a disguise? Then it's a pretty convincing one. And maybe after wearing it long enough, it stops being a disguise and starts being the truth. That night, Kane flew in his true form high above the city, wrestling with an impossible decision. His communication device had been replaced by one of his scouts, along with increasingly urgent messages from General Rixtar. The fleet was now positioned just beyond Pluto, invisible to human detection, but ready to strike. Kane had 48 hours to provide final intelligence before the invasion began. He thought about Maya's discussion group, about Jake's belief that good people could make evil choices, about Amy's insight that forgiveness was about the forgiver's choice to not be poisoned by anger. He thought about Marcus forgiving his brother, and how that forgiveness had actually helped his brother change. Most of all, he thought about Maya herself, her quiet strength, her absolute faith that people could be better than their worst moments, her belief that even terrible people deserved a chance at redemption. But he also thought about his crew, dragons who had followed him for centuries, who trusted his leadership. He thought about the Draconian Empire, the only family he'd ever known. If he betrayed them, he would be hunted across the galaxy. There would be no safe haven for a traitor. Kane landed on a mountaintop outside the city and let out a roar that shook the trees for miles around. Animals fled in terror from the ancient sound of draconic rage and pain. When the echo faded, Kane was crying, something he hadn't done since he was a hatchling. He was caught between two worlds, two versions of himself, two completely different ideas of what strength meant. In one direction lay everything he'd ever been. Kethvar the Destroyer, Supreme Commander of the Draconian Fleet, Conqueror of 17 star systems. In the other direction lay everything he wanted to become. Kane Morrison, friend to a blind philosophy student who believed in second chances. He couldn't be both. Dawn was breaking over the city when Kane finally made his choice. He activated his communication device and sent a message to General Rixtar. Reconnaissance complete. Will provide full intelligence report in person. Request immediate transport to flagship. Then he flew back to the city, landed in the alley behind Luna's Corner Café, and resumed his human form. Maya would be arriving for their Tuesday morning. Coffee in 3 hours. He had that long to figure out how to tell her goodbye without telling her why, or how to tell her the truth and pray she was right about forgiveness being stronger than fear. Maya noticed the changes in Kane before he said a word. He was sitting at their usual table when she arrived at Luna's Corner Café, but something was different. His breathing was deeper, more controlled, like someone trying very hard to stay calm. When she sat down, she could feel tension radiating from him like heat. "You're upset about something," she said, settling into her chair. "How can you tell?" "You're sitting differently, more rigid. And you haven't touched your coffee. I can smell that it's full and getting cold." Kane let out a short laugh. "You notice everything. Occupational hazard of being blind. When you can't see, you learn to pay attention to everything else." Maya reached across the table and found his hand. His skin was even warmer than usual, almost hot. "Kane, what's wrong?" For a moment, Kane didn't respond. Then he turned his hand over and gently squeezed her fingers. "Maya, how well do you think you know me?" What kind of question is that? An important one. How much do you actually know about who I am? Maya tilted her head, considering. "I know you're kind. I know you listen when people talk. I know you ask questions like you're trying to understand the world from scratch. I know you're running from something in your past that you think makes you unforgivable. But facts, concrete information, where I'm from, what I do for work, why I came here." Maya was quiet. She realized that in all their conversations, Kane had been remarkably good at deflecting personal questions. "Not much," she admitted. "But I know the important things." "Do you?" "Kane, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Kane stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air. Will you walk with me?" They left the cafe and walked toward the small park a few blocks away. Kane moved differently too, Maya noticed. Usually he matched her pace perfectly, but now he seemed to be holding himself back like he wanted to move faster or differently. "There's something I need to tell you," Kane said when they reached a bench under an old oak tree. "But I'm afraid that once I do, everything will change between us." "Is it illegal?" "Not exactly." "Are you married?" "No." "Do you have some kind of disease?" "No, Maya, it's nothing like that. It's—" Kane struggled for words. "It's about what I am, not who. What?" Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Before Kane could answer, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She pulled it out, and her phone's accessibility feature read the message aloud. "Maya, it's Lisa. Turn on the news. They're reporting strange objects in space. Astronomers are freaking out." Kane went very still beside her. "Strange objects?" Maya asked. Kane's voice was barely a whisper. "They're early." "Who's early?" "Kane, what's going on?" Kane stood and began pacing. Maya could hear his footsteps, but they sounded wrong somehow, heavier than they should be. And was that a scraping sound? "Maya, I need you to listen to me very carefully. In the next few days, things are going to happen that will change everything. Your government will probably advise people to stay indoors. I need you to promise me you'll do that." "You're talking like you know what's coming." "I do know." "How?" Kane stopped pacing. "Because I'm part of it." Maya felt the world tilt. "Part of what?" "Maya, what would you say if I told you that life exists on other planets? That some of those beings can travel between stars? I'd say that's always been possible. The universe is too big for Earth to be the only planet with life. And what if I told you that some of those beings were here, on Earth, right now? Maya's mouth went dry. I'd ask why they came. Kane was quiet for so long that Maya wondered if he'd walked away. When he finally spoke, his voice was full of pain. Not for good reasons. Kane, are you trying to tell me you're an alien? Yes. Maya laughed, but it came out shaky. Okay, assuming that's true, and I'm not saying I believe you. What kind of alien? Kane sat back down heavily. The kind your people would call a monster. What do you look like? In your real form? Large, very large. Scales instead of skin. Wings, claws, fire. Kane's voice grew smaller. I look like something from your nightmares. Maya was quiet, processing. Part of her wanted to laugh this off, as an elaborate joke or a mental health crisis. But Kane had never lied to her before, as far as she knew. And there had always been strange things about him, the way he spoke, his odd questions about human nature, how he never seemed to eat, his unusual warmth. A dragon, she said finally. Yes. And you're here because... Kane's voice broke. Because I was sent to gather intelligence before my people invade your world. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the bench, feeling dizzy. Invade? Maya, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to what? To care about you, to care about any of you. Maya stood up abruptly and started walking away. Maya, wait! She whirled around. Wait? You just told me you're here to help destroy my planet and you want me to wait? It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. Kane ran after her, catching her arm gently. His skin was burning hot now. Maya, please, let me explain. Fine. Explain. When I came here, it was just a job. Observe human defenses, find weaknesses, report back. I'd done it dozens of times before on other worlds. I never thought about the people who lived there. They were just obstacles to be removed. And now, I can't stop thinking about them. About you, about your friends, about the waitress at the cafe who always remembers how you like your coffee. About children playing in parks and old couples holding hands and people like your discussion group who spend their free time helping each other become better. Maya felt tears starting. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. If I refuse to complete my mission, my own people will kill me. If I complete it... Kane's voice trailed off. If you complete it, you'll be responsible for the death of every person on Earth. Yes, Maya wiped her eyes. How long do we have? 2 days, maybe less. And you're sure there's no way to stop it? Kane was quiet. There might be one way, but it would mean turning against my own kind. It would mean giving up everything I've ever been. And if you don't? Then I lose everything I want to become. Maya reached out and found his face with her hands. His skin was almost too hot to touch, and she could feel that the texture was different, rougher, with what felt like scales just under the surface. Kane, look at me. I mean, look at my face. I am. Do you think I'm going to turn away from you because you look different than I thought? Maya, you don't understand. I'm not just different, I'm dangerous. I could hurt you without meaning to. But you won't. How can you be sure? Because for the past 2 months you've been sitting 3 feet away from me twice a week, and you've never hurt me once. Because you steady my coffee cup when I reach for it wrong. because you walk on the traffic side of the sidewalk when we're together, because you chose to tell me the truth, even though it would have been easier to just disappear. Kane leaned into her touch. I never wanted this to happen. Which part? Coming here or caring about us? Both. Neither. I don't know anymore. Maya dropped her hands but stayed close. Kane, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Are you going to help them destroy us? Kane was quiet for a long time. No, he said finally. I can't. I won't. Even if it means they'll kill you? Even then. Maya nodded slowly. Then we need to figure out how to save both our worlds. Maya, you don't understand what you're saying. My people have technology that's centuries ahead of yours. They have weapons that could crack this planet in half. Then we'll just have to be smarter than them. Maya took his burning hot hand in both of hers. You said yourself that humans are good at impossible things when they work together. So let's work together. For the first time since the conversation began, Kane smiled. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, Maya said honestly. But I'm more terrified of losing you, and I'm definitely more terrified of watching my world burn because I was too scared to help the one person who might be able to stop it. Kane squeezed her hands gently, careful not to use too much of his strength. I don't deserve you. Lucky for you, this isn't about what you deserve. It's about what you choose to do next. Above them, invisible to human eyes, the first scouts of the Draconian fleet moved into Earth's atmosphere, preparing for the invasion that would begin in 36 hours. But in a small park, a dragon and a human girl were planning the impossible, a way to save two worlds from destroying each other. The emergency broadcast interrupted every television channel, radio station, and internet stream on Earth at exactly 3:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Maya heard it through her phone while she sat in her apartment, still processing everything Kane had told her. This is a message from the United States government. Astronomical observations have confirmed the presence of large, unidentified objects approaching Earth. As a precautionary measure, all civilians are advised to remain indoors until further notice. Do not panic. This is not a drill. Maya's hands shook as she called Kane. He answered on the first ring. They're here, he said without preamble. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. Kane's voice was strained. Maya, I have to go to them. I have to try to stop this. Not alone. Maya, no. Absolutely not. I won't put you in danger. Kane, listen to me. You said your people don't understand mercy or forgiveness, right? That they only respect strength? Yes. Then you showing up alone proves their point. It makes you look weak, like you've been corrupted by spending time with humans. But if you show up with a human who knows exactly who you are and chooses to stand with you anyway. Kane was quiet. That could work. It might make them pause, long enough to listen. Or it could get us both killed. Probably that one. Maya took a deep breath. I'm in. Maya, you don't understand what you're risking. My people don't just kill enemies. They destroy them completely. There wouldn't even be remains to bury. Kane, stop trying to protect me and start trusting me. I've made my choice. 2 hours later, Maya stood in an empty field outside the city, feeling more afraid than she'd ever been in her life. Kane had asked her to meet him here after sunset, promising he would explain everything when she arrived. She heard him before she saw him, or rather, before she would have seen him if she could see. The sound was like wind through massive trees, rhythmic and powerful. Then something large landed nearby, and the ground shook under her feet. Maya. Kane's voice was the same, but it came from much higher up than usual, and there was a different quality to it, deeper, with an echo-like sound bouncing off cavern walls. "Is this your real form?" "Yes." Maya walked toward his voice, hands extended. Her fingers touched something smooth and warm, scales the size of dinner plates. She traced upward until she found what felt like a massive leg, then higher to his chest. She had to stretch her arms wide to span even a portion of it. "You're enormous," she whispered. "I'm actually small for a dragon. General Rixtar is twice my size." Maya continued exploring with her hands, trying to build a mental picture. When she found his head, it was the size of a small car. His breath was warm against her face and smelled like cinnamon and lightning. "You're beautiful," she said. Kane made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been crying. "Maya, you can't see me." "I don't need to see you to know you're beautiful. You have a beautiful heart. Dragons don't have hearts like humans do. All beings have hearts, Kane. They're just not all in the same place." Kane lowered his massive head until it rested gently against her. "Are you sure about this? Once we go up there, there's no turning back?" "I'm sure." Kane's transformation was incredible. Maya felt the air around them change as his body shifted and grew. Wing membranes unfurled with sounds like sails catching. Wind. When he spoke again, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding armies. "Climb onto my back. There are natural handholds between my shoulder blades. Hold tight. We're going very high." The flight was terrifying and magnificent. Maya couldn't see the earth falling away below them, or the stars growing brighter as they climbed above the atmosphere, but she could feel the power in Kane's wings, the careful way he flew to make sure she stayed secure, the growing cold and thinness of the air. Then suddenly she could feel warmth again, artificial warmth. They were inside something. "The flagship," Kane said as they landed. "My ship." Maya heard sounds she couldn't identify, mechanical hums, distant voices speaking in a language that sounded like controlled thunder, the echo of vast spaces. When Kane resumed his human form, she could hear the sharp intake of breath from multiple sources around them. "Commander Kethvar," came a voice like boulders grinding together. "You bring a human onto our vessel. Explain yourself." "General Rixtar." Kane's voice had changed again, taking on the formal tone Maya had heard hints of before. "I bring proof that humans are not what we believe them to be." "Proof? This small defective creature is proof of what?" Maya felt anger flare in her chest. "I can hear you, you know." The silence that followed was so complete that Maya wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Then the grinding voice spoke again, but now it was closer. "It speaks our language." "I'm speaking English," Maya said. "If you're understanding me, that's your technology, not mine." "Fascinating. Commander, explain why you believe this creature has any relevance to our mission." Kane stepped closer to Maya. "Because in the 6 months I've observed them, I've learned that humans possess something we do not. Which is the ability to change, to grow beyond what they were, to choose mercy over vengeance, forgiveness over retribution, cooperation over conquest." General Rixtar made a sound like rocks falling. "Weakness." "No," Maya said firmly. "Strength. You dare contradict me, human?" "I dare to tell you the truth." Maya's voice grew stronger. "You think strength means being able to destroy things, but any fool with a big enough stick can break something. Real strength is building things, healing things, protecting things that can't protect themselves. Pretty words from someone whose species is about to be extinct. Maya felt Kane tense beside her, but she pressed on. Is that what you want your legacy to be? The species that destroyed everything beautiful in the universe because you were too afraid to try building something beautiful yourselves? Afraid? General Rixtar's voice rose dangerously. Terrified, Maya said. You're terrified that if you stop conquering, you'll have to look at what you've become. You're terrified that somewhere deep down, you know what you're doing is wrong, and changing would mean admitting that all the worlds you've destroyed, all the lives you've taken, all the civilizations you've wiped out, that none of it was necessary. The chamber erupted in angry voices speaking the grinding dragon language. But through it all, Maya heard Kane's voice, clear and strong. She's right. The voices stopped. General Rixtar, I invoke the ancient law. I challenge you for command of this fleet. More silence. Then, Commander, you cannot be serious. I am. Single combat to the death. If I win, the fleet withdraws from this system. If you win, you may proceed with the invasion. And if I refuse, then you admit that your authority rests on politics rather than strength. You admit that you're afraid to face me in fair combat. Maya heard what sounded like massive chains rattling as General Rixtar moved. Very well, Commander, but know that when I kill you, I will make this human watch. She will see what her beautiful heart looks like when it stops beating. I can't see, Maya said quietly. What? I'm blind. I can't see anything, but I can hear everything, and I can feel Kane's heart beating next to mine. And I know that heart is worth more than all your conquest and destruction combined. Kane leaned down and whispered in her ear. Maya, no matter what happens, remember that you showed me what it means to be truly strong. Kane, she whispered back, remember that strength isn't about fighting alone. Trust in what we've built together. As Kane began to transform back into his true form, Maya heard the sound of other dragons doing the same. Massive bodies shifting, wings unfurling, claws scraping against metal floors. She was surrounded by creatures that could incinerate her with a breath, but all her fear was focused on one thing: the possibility of losing Kane just when they'd found each other. The battle circle formed around them with sounds like mountains moving. Maya stood at the edge, her hands pressed against the cold metal wall, listening for Kane's heartbeat among all the other sounds of preparation for combat. Begin, commanded a voice she didn't recognize. And in the vast chamber of an alien ship high above Earth, a dragon who had learned the meaning of love prepared to fight for the right to choose mercy over destruction. Maya closed her eyes and listened to the sound of two worlds hanging in the balance. The sound of two massive dragons fighting was unlike anything Maya had ever imagined. It wasn't just roars and crashes. It was like listening to earthquakes and thunder happening at the same time, punctuated by the whistle of air through massive wings and the screech of claws against scales. Maya pressed herself against the cold metal wall, trying to track Kane's movement by sound alone. She could distinguish his roar from General Rixtar's. Kane's was higher, more musical somehow, while the General's was like grinding stone. But as the battle went on, both voices grew strained and desperate. A particularly violent collision shook the entire ship, and Maya heard several dragon voices muttering in their language. She didn't need a translation to understand they were betting on the outcome. Then, suddenly, silence. Maya held her breath, straining to hear any sound that would tell her who had won. When Kane's voice finally came, it was weak but triumphant. "It's over. General Rixtar yields." The chamber erupted in a mixture of roars, some angry, some accepting. Maya heard Kane's heavy breathing as he landed near her. "By ancient law, I claim command of this fleet," Kane announced in his formal voice. "My first order is this. All ships will withdraw to the outer system immediately. There will be no invasion of the human homeworld." "Commander," came another voice, one Maya hadn't heard before. "Many of us question your fitness to lead. You have been compromised by contact with the humans." "Have I?" Kane's voice grew stronger. "Or have I learned something about strength that you haven't? Major Vexnil, you commanded the destruction of the Centauri colonies. How many ships did you lose in that campaign?" 47, Commander. Captain Dracacor. You led the siege of Rigel Prime. Your losses? 63 ships, sir. "And I," Kane said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "have convinced an entire world to surrender without losing a single vessel or life." Maya blinked in surprise. That wasn't exactly what had happened, but she kept quiet. "Impossible," someone growled. "Is it? Human, tell them what your species intends to do." Maya realized Kane was talking to her. She straightened, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "My people will fight you," she said loudly. "We'll fight with everything we have and we'll never stop. Even if you destroy our cities, burn our forests, and kill most of us, the survivors will keep fighting. We'll teach our children to fight you, and their children after that. You'll never have peace on our world." "You see?" Kane said. "The humans will resist until extinction. The cost in ships and lives would be enormous. But I have negotiated a different arrangement." Maya hoped Kane knew what he was doing. "The humans have agreed to provide tribute," Kane continued. "Technology, resources, scientific knowledge. In exchange, their world remains intact and their population unharmed. What tribute could these primitives possibly offer that we would value?" Major Vexnil demanded. Kane paused. Maya could almost hear him thinking. "They have mastered something we have not, the ability to terraform dead worlds, to bring life to planets we have strip-mined, to restore ecosystems we have destroyed." Maya's eyebrows rose. Humans barely understood their own ecosystem, let alone terraforming. But several dragons made interested sounds. "Furthermore," Kane continued, "they have developed medical techniques that could extend even draconian lifespans, and their mathematical approaches to faster-than-light travel show promise for improving our own ships." "These are bold claims, Commander," said Captain Dracacor. "How do we verify them?" "The human will demonstrate," Kane said. "But first, she requires certain guarantees." Maya jumped in, hoping she understood Kane's plan. "My people need time to prepare these offerings, and we need assurance that you won't simply take what we give you and destroy us anyway." "What assurance could we possibly offer that you would trust?" General Rixtar asked. He sounded injured but alert. Maya took a deep breath. "A permanent ambassador. One of your people stays on Earth, integrated into our society. A hostage to ensure both sides keep their word." "Unacceptable," several voices said at once. "I'll do it," Kane said quietly. The chamber fell silent again. "Commander," General Rixtar said slowly, "you cannot be serious." "I am," I'll remain on Earth to oversee the tribute collection and ensure human compliance. In return, the fleet withdraws and allows the humans time to develop what we've requested. And if they fail to deliver? Kane's voice was grim. Then I'll signal for your return, and the invasion proceeds as planned. Maya heard dragons moving around the chamber, probably conferring with each other. Finally, Major Vexenil spoke. Very well, Commander. You have 7 of their months to produce results. If the tribute is not satisfactory, we return and finish what we started. Understood, Kane said. Now all ships withdraw to the designated coordinates. I'll establish a base of operations on the surface and begin organizing the tribute collection. As the other dragons began filing out of the chamber, Maya heard General Rixtar approach Kane. This is a dangerous game you're playing, young commander. If you fail, it will mean your death as well as theirs. I understand the stakes, Kane replied. Do you? Because I think you've forgotten something important. Which is? Humans lie. They break promises. They will tell you whatever you want to hear while they prepare to betray you. General Rixtar's voice moved closer to Maya. Especially this one. She speaks pretty words about strength and beauty, but when it comes down to survival, she'll sacrifice you to save her own kind. Maya felt her face flush with anger. You don't know anything about me, don't I? Human, if you had to choose between saving your commander's life and saving 1,000 human lives, which would you choose? The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to answer, then stopped, because she honestly didn't know. I see, General Rixtar said with satisfaction. Commander, remember that moment of hesitation when this alliance inevitably falls apart? After the general left, Kane knelt beside Maya in his human form. Are you all right? Am I? Kane. We just lied to your entire fleet. We promised them things humanity can't possibly deliver. Medical treatments to extend dragon lifespans. Terraforming. Technology? We don't have any of that. I know. Then what's the plan? Kane was quiet for a moment. We have 7 months to figure it out. That's not a plan, that's a prayer. Maya, do you remember what you told me about humans being good at impossible things? Yes, but 7 months ago I was Kethavar the Destroyer, planning to obliterate your species without a second thought. Now I'm Kane Morrison, and I've just committed treason against my own people to save yours. If that's not impossible, I don't know what is. Maya leaned against him, feeling the familiar warmth of his skin. What if your general is right? What if humans really will betray you? When it comes down to survival? Kane was quiet for a long time. Then I guess I'll find out what it feels like to have my heart broken. And if we can't deliver what we promised? Then in 7 months, my people will return and finish what they started, but at least we'll have 7 months to try. Maya nodded slowly. So what do we do first? We go back to Earth and tell your leaders that their planet just became part of a galactic empire. And then we pray that humans really are as remarkable as you've convinced me they are. As Kane prepared to transform for the flight back to Earth, Maya grabbed his hand. Kane, I need you to know something. What? When your general asked me that question, about choosing between you and 1,000 humans, I hesitated because the answer scares me. Which answer? Maya looked up toward where she thought his face was. That I don't think I could sacrifice you, not even for 1,000 lives. Maybe that makes me a terrible person, but it's the truth. Kane squeezed her hand gently. Maya, that doesn't make you terrible. It makes you human. Is that good or bad? I guess we'll find out together. As they prepared to leave the dragon ship and return to a world that would never be the same, neither of them noticed the small device that General Rixtar had left behind, a device that would record every word they said and transmit it back to the fleet. The game was more dangerous than either of them knew. The secure briefing room at NORAD was packed with the most powerful people on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists who had been hastily assembled when Kane and Maya landed outside Cheyenne Mountain and requested an immediate meeting with world leaders. Maya sat at a long table, still trying to process that she was in the same room as people she'd only heard about on the news. Kane sat beside her in his human form, looking perfectly calm despite the dozens of hostile stares directed at him. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said President Williams, a woman whose voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "You're telling us that Earth is now part of some kind of galactic empire, and we have 7 months to develop technologies we don't currently possess, or your people will return and destroy us all." "That's correct," Kane said simply. "And you expect us to trust the word of someone who came here to conquer us?" Maya spoke up. "He risked his life to save us. He fought his own people to buy us time." "So he says," General Hayes interjected. "How? Do we know this isn't all an elaborate deception? How do we know you're not working together to soften us up for invasion?" Kane stood slowly. "Would you like a demonstration of what I could do if I wanted to harm you?" Every security guard in the room tensed, hands moving toward weapons. "Kane, don't!" Maya said quickly. Kane remained standing. "General Hayes, your satellites have been tracking objects in your outer system for the past week. How many ships do your astronomers estimate?" General Hayes glanced at an aide who whispered something in his ear. "Approximately 300. 347, actually. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy a continent. If I wanted to deceive you, I could have simply waited 7 months and watched your civilization end." President Williams leaned forward. "So why didn't you?" Kane looked at Maya. "Because someone showed me that strength doesn't come from destruction. It comes from protection." "That's very touching," said Dr. Chen, the science advisor. "But you're asking us to develop technologies that are decades beyond our current capabilities. Terraforming? Life extension? It's impossible." "Not impossible," Maya said, "just very difficult. And humans are good at doing very difficult things when we work together." "Miss Henderson," President Williams said gently, "with all due respect, you're not a scientist. You can't possibly understand what we're being asked to do." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You're right. I'm not a scientist. I'm a philosophy student who happens to be blind. But I know something about seeing possibilities that other people miss. Such as? Such as the fact that you're thinking about this all wrong. You're trying to figure out how to develop these technologies from scratch, but Kane isn't asking you to invent them. He's asking you to demonstrate them." The room was quiet. Kane looked at Maya with surprise. "What do you mean?" Dr. Chen asked. Maya stood, her confidence growing. "Kane, your people have been conquering worlds for centuries, right?" "Yes. So you've seen lots of different approaches to science and technology, different ways of solving problems." "That's true." Maya turned toward the assembled leaders. "What if we can't give you finished technologies, but we can give you something your people have never seen before? Something that proves human ingenuity is worth preserving?" "I'm listening," Kane said slowly. Maya began pacing, her mind racing. "Your people are conquerors. They take what they want by force. But humans have developed something you probably haven't encountered. the ability to create value through cooperation, to solve problems by working together instead of dominating each other. Explain. The Internet, global communication networks, international space stations, climate research, collaborations, medical research partnerships. We share information across the entire planet instantly. We work together on projects that no single nation could accomplish alone. Dr. Chen sat up straighter. She's right. Our greatest achievements have been collaborative efforts. Maya nodded enthusiastically. Kane, has any species you've conquered had planet-wide cooperation on the scale humans have achieved? Kane was quiet for a moment. No. Most species we encounter are divided into competing factions. We often use those divisions against them. But we're not divided when it really matters, Maya said. When there's a natural disaster, countries that normally hate each other send aid. When there's a disease outbreak, scientists share research freely. When we explore space, we do it together. President Williams looked skeptical. That's not entirely true. We have plenty of conflicts. But look at what's happening right now, Maya pointed out. 12 hours ago, world leaders were dealing with their own domestic problems. Now you're all sitting in the same room, working together to face a threat to our entire species. That level of cooperation is what makes humans special. Kane leaned forward. You're suggesting we demonstrate human cooperation as a valuable resource? I'm suggesting we demonstrate something your people have never learned how to do, turn enemies into allies. You said dragons only respect strength, right? What if we can show them that cooperation is actually a form of strength they've never considered? General Hayes frowned. How exactly would we demonstrate that? Maya smiled. By doing exactly what we're doing right now. Kane, what would happen if you took a delegation of human leaders back to your fleet? Not as prisoners or subordinates, but as equals? The room erupted in protests. Absolutely not, General Hayes said immediately. We're not sending our leaders into a trap. It wouldn't be a trap, Kane said thoughtfully. Maya's right. Dragons have never encountered willing cooperation from a conquered species. It would be unprecedented and potentially suicidal, President Williams added. Maya held up her hand. What if it wasn't world leaders? What if it was scientists, engineers, doctors, people who could actually demonstrate human capabilities? Dr. Chen nodded slowly. Technical exchange. Show them our problem-solving methods, our collaborative research techniques. Exactly, Maya said. And Kane, your people would be curious, right? They've never seen anything like human scientific cooperation. Kane was quiet for a long moment. It could work, but it would be incredibly dangerous. If my people perceive it as weakness instead of strength, then we make sure they don't, Maya said firmly. We don't go as supplicants. We go as partners. We offer them something they've never had, the chance to create instead of just destroying. President Williams looked around the room. This is insane. Yes, Maya agreed. But it's the kind of insane that might actually work. General Hayes shook his head. The risk is enormous. If this goes wrong, we lose our best people and gain nothing. If we do nothing, we lose everyone, Maya pointed out. At least this way, we're trying. Kane stood again. There's something else you should know. My people are monitoring all communications from Earth. They know about this meeting. They know we're planning something. The room went cold. Then this. Conversation may already be over, President Williams said grimly. Not necessarily, Kane said. Monitoring communications is standard procedure. but what matters is what they think they're hearing. Maya caught on first. They expect you to be organizing tribute collection. Technical demonstrations and scientific exchanges would fit that expectation. Until they realize what we're actually doing, Dr. Chen said. Kane nodded. Which gives us one chance to get this right. If we're going to do this, it has to be soon, and it has to be convincing. President Williams looked around the room one more time. All in favor of the most dangerous diplomatic mission in human history? Slowly, hands began to rise. Maya reached out and found Kane's hand. Are you sure about this? No, Kane said honestly. But Maya, you taught me that sometimes the most important choices are the ones we make when we're not sure of anything, except that we have to try. And if your people see this as betrayal instead of cooperation, Kane squeezed her hand. Then I guess we'll find out together whether love really is stronger than fear. 3 days later, a small human delegation prepared to board a modified shuttle for the most important journey in Earth's history. Maya stood beside Kane in the launch facility, knowing that in a few hours they would either save 2 civilizations or doom them both. Ready? Kane asked. Maya smiled. No, but let's go anyway. As they walked toward the shuttle that would carry them back to the Dragon Fleet, neither of them noticed the small device Kane had discovered and disabled in his quarters, the same device that had been transmitting their conversations to General Rixtar. The dragons weren't the only ones playing a deeper game. The human delegation consisted of 12 people: scientists, engineers, doctors, and diplomats, who had volunteered for what everyone knew might be a one-way trip. Maya stood among them in the shuttle bay of the Dragon flagship, trying not to show how terrified she was. Remember, Kane said quietly, dragons respect directness and strength. Don't apologize for being human. Show them what humans can do. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a biologist who specialized in ecosystem restoration, squeezed Maya's arm. You got us this far. We've got it from here. The massive doors of the shuttle bay opened, and the delegation walked into a chamber filled with dragons, in their true forms. Maya had grown used to Kane's presence, but being surrounded by dozens of massive ancient beings was overwhelming. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their power. General Rixtar dominated the center of the chamber, his scales dark as burnt metal, his eyes like molten gold. When he spoke, his voice made the floor tremble. So, Commander Kethvar, these are the primitives who promise us miracles. Kane stepped forward, and Maya felt rather than saw him shift into his dragon form. General, may I present the human scientific delegation? They're here to demonstrate their capabilities. Demonstrate? General Rixtar's laugh was like grinding stone. Very well. Show us these miraculous technologies that will make sparing your world worthwhile. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her voice steady despite the circumstances. We'd like to start with a question. How many worlds have you conquered that are now dead? The chamber filled with angry rumbles. Several dragons moved closer, clearly offended by the directness of the question. All conquered worlds serve the Empire, Major Vexanil growled. That's not what I asked, Dr. Martinez replied calmly. I asked how many are dead. Strip-mined until nothing grows. Polluted until nothing can live. Used up and abandoned. General Rixtar's eyes narrowed. What concern is that of yours? Because we know how to bring them back to life. The chamber fell silent. Dr. James Park, an environmental engineer, activated a holographic projector they'd brought. Images of Earth's ecosystem restoration projects filled the air. Forests regrown from barren land, rivers cleaned from toxic waste, species brought back from near extinction. This is the Sahara Reforestation Project, Dr. Park explained. 20 years ago, this was dead desert. Now it's productive farmland that feeds millions. This is the Great Barrier Reef Restoration, Dr. Martinez added. We brought back coral systems that had been destroyed by pollution and climate change. Captain Drakor leaned forward, studying the images. How? Cooperation, Maya said, stepping forward. Every one of these projects involved thousands of people from dozens of countries, sharing knowledge and resources. You work together across your entire planet? Asked a younger dragon Maya hadn't heard speak before. When we have to, Dr. Lisa. Thompson, a medical researcher, replied. When we faced global diseases, we shared research instantly. When we explore space, we pool our resources. When we face extinction-level threats, she gestured around the chamber, we work together to find solutions. General Rixtar made a dismissive sound. Pretty pictures. But can you prove these techniques work on worlds that have been truly devastated? Kane spoke up. General, you've mentioned several times that the Rigel system mines are played out and the planets are now useless. What if they weren't useless? What if they could be made productive again? Impossible. Rigel Prime is a dead rock. Dr. Martinez smiled. We'd like the chance to prove you wrong. What followed was the most intense scientific discussion Maya had ever witnessed. The human delegation described techniques for soil restoration, atmospheric reprocessing, ecosystem engineering, and species reconstruction. The dragons asked increasingly complex questions, their voices growing more interested and less hostile. This bioengineering approach, Captain Drakor said, studying a genetic reconstruction diagram, it could work on Vega 7. We've been unable to extract resources there because the native microorganisms corrode our equipment. We could probably solve that, Dr. Thompson said. We've dealt with similar problems on Earth. And this atmospheric processing technique, another dragon mused. It might make the outer worlds of the Centauri system habitable again. Maya felt the mood in the chamber shifting. The dragons were no longer just listening. They were participating. They were sharing their own knowledge, describing their worlds, asking for human input on problems they'd faced. Then General Rixtar spoke, his voice cutting through the growing excitement. Enough. The chamber fell silent. This is all very interesting, but you're missing the fundamental problem. Which is? Kane asked. Trust. These humans speak of cooperation and sharing knowledge, but how do we know they won't use our information against us? How do we know they won't develop weapons from our technology? How do we know they won't betray us the moment they're strong enough? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya felt the fragile progress they'd made starting to crumble. Then, Dr. Martinez spoke. You don't. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. You don't know we won't betray you, she continued. Just like we don't know you won't decide to destroy us anyway. Trust isn't about knowing the future. It's about choosing to believe that working together is better than being alone. And why should we make that choice? General Rixtar demanded. Maya stepped forward. Because you're tired. The silence was deafening. You're tired of conquering dead worlds. You're tired of ruling over ashes. You're tired of being feared instead of respected. You're tired of being alone in the universe. General Rickstar's eyes blazed with anger. You know nothing about us. I know you've been fighting for so long that you've forgotten what you're fighting for. I know you've conquered so many worlds that they all blur together. I know you've destroyed so much that you've forgotten how to create anything. Maya, Kane warned quietly, but Maya pressed on. I know because Kane told me. He told me about the empty feeling after every conquest, the boredom, the loneliness, the sense that no matter how much you destroy, it never fills the hole inside. You! General Rickstar took a step toward Maya, his massive form towering over her. And what would you know about holes inside us, human? I know that the only thing that fills them is connection, purpose, the feeling that you're building something that matters. Kane found that with us. Maybe your people could too. You're suggesting an alliance between conquerors and the conquered. I'm suggesting a partnership between beings who are tired of being alone. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Captain Drakkor spoke. General, the human proposals have merit. The Rigel system has been worthless too.